calls, we'll just go down and do introductions. And then I want to talk a little bit about the all-staff meeting and the National Youth Sports Awards that we had. And it's cool that some of you were there, and I got to meet some people that I'd never met before, which was fun. And then we're going to get into honoring the game, which is the end. It's the last part of the workshop, and talk a little bit about the scenario menu and how to handle that. And then we're going to jump right into getting you guys ready to do this on your own. So that's where I'm headed today. A lot of stuff in a little amount of time, so stop me if I talk fast. I actually got a chance to present out at All Staff this year in front of the staff, and a lot of my feedback was, how do you talk so fast? So talking fast is one of my specialties, but sometimes I don't want it to go without understanding. So anyway, Taylor and Darren and Ruben, and I don't think Mary Beth is on this right now. No. But if you guys want to chime in, go ahead. But I think this is really important information for the new trainers. Once a year, we have an all-staff meeting, and we get I think there's about 60 staff members, all the chapter executive directors and partnership managers, and anybody really involved on the staff at PCA to come together for basically a 3-day meeting, and then that culminates on Saturday night with the National Youth Sports Awards, which is a great way to end sort of 3 days of meetings. So one of the things, I think, a lot of it is, business, local chapter business, things like that, but I think it's so important for the trainers, especially you guys. One of the things I get out of it every single year is the impact that we are having across the globe and across the country. And hearing that from people like Jim Thompson and from people that are from outside agencies that are actually scrutinizing our company to find out the impact that we're having is so powerful, I think, as trainers. Ruben was talking to us just recently on a trainer call and said, one of the things that we have a difficulty answering as trainers is the question, what impact is PCA having? And sometimes when you're stuck on your little island of where you live and you're just presenting your own workshops, you forget that we are a national force that's trying to change a culture across the country. And how is that being measured? So Jim Thompson, I believe it was on Thursday, just shared with us the impact that we're having. And the companies, for example, one of the companies he was bringing up was the Bechtel Foundation, which we do get a lot of support from. Well, in order for the Bechtel Foundation to decide whether they want to give us tons of money as a corporate sponsor this year, they wanted to hire an outside organization to actually study the impact that we're having. And so, and also put a plan together for expansion and where we're going into the future. So the upside of that is that we have a company called La Piana out in California that really helped us to put a pretty extensive plan together as to where PCA is heading within the next 5 fiscal years. And the exciting thing is right now, we are at 12 chapters nationwide, and by the year 2020, we want to expand to 26 different chapters. So that was really exciting, especially hearing that Philadelphia was one of them. I was really excited about that. And also, and this is funny to me, I never knew how many outside organizations have actually done studies on Positive Coaching Alliance to see the impact that it's making. I think one of the earliest was Nike, and that was in 2006, started to do research to find out, okay, we'll give you lots of money as a corporate sponsor, but we want to make sure that it's making a difference. So currently, Tufts University is doing a study, and they're studying the impact of the program on the athletes, which, again, as a researcher and an educator, I was thinking control group here, how do you do that? And we were joking about, you give one school Positive Coaching Alliance training to their athletes, and the other one you give them negative coaching. Like, that's not going to work. So what they're doing is they're doing a control group study where they're holding on. I think it's called a withholding study. So one of the schools is going to go through PCA training for a year, and they're going to give them surveys and ask about the impact and the results of that. And then they're going to wait a year for another school to get the same training. And then they're going to compare over the next 5 years, even after the kids get out of high school, what impact has that had. So I found that really promising and really exciting. Ruben or Taylor or Darren, do you guys want to add anything to that?
I'll jump in. Tufts conducts the research, and then it's funded by a third party. In this case, I think it's Templeton is the foundation. And then with the Nike, one of the first studies that was done on PCA impact, Kelly's correct. It was funded by Nike. Nike did not conduct the study or the research.
Okay.
They provided the funding so that professors who know standards for making, the research valid and whatnot. They execute it. But PCA has been studying its impact in different ways for over 10 years, and the results consistently come back that we are indeed impacting the culture of youth sports, and we are indeed having a positive impact on the organizations that partner with us. And to summarize a key point that Kelly was making is that for many years when we get asked, are you having impact, we've kind of hemmed and hawed about it, and we shouldn't hem and haw about it. We know, and the research shows that we are having substantial impact, and the kind of impact that we want. We are changing the culture of youth sports one organization at a time.
Yeah, thank you, Ruben. And I thought what was really interesting too, talking about changing a culture. I'm in, suburban Philadelphia, probably very similar to a lot of your areas. One of our chapters is in Hawaii, and the executive director, Jeannie Garcia, said a huge impact that we have seen in Hawaii is there's less drinking at Little League games. And I went, wait a minute, what? So PCA changing the culture has changed the need for parents, adults, whatever, to bring alcohol to Little League games, which has then cut down on the violence and the yelling. And, I just thought, wow, talk about culture differences between areas. I mean, I don't think I've ever in my life seen a keg of beer on the side of a Little League game around here, but that's not part of the culture. So I just think it's really neat to see that the impact, it comes in all different shapes and forms. And I thought that was pretty neat. Taylor or Darren, do you have anything to add, or? You're good? Okay. All right. Well, the other cool part, and I'm not going to take up too much time because I know we're getting started late, but the other really impactful part for me of last week was being able to go to the National Youth Sports Awards. And I know Mary Beth was there too, which was really neat to meet her in person. Every year we nominate, coaches are nominated from all over the country, and I think there were 2,100, if I'm not wrong, this year nominations that came in, and PCA votes on 4 that will be given the National Double Goal Coach of the Year award. And it's really an honor when you read the resumes and the background behind these coaches. But even more impressive was getting to meet them and hear their stories. So one at a time, the coaches came up to the stage and they played a little tribute video to them. And it was players, the coaches didn't know it was coming, but the players talked about the impact these coaches had on them, friends, colleagues, athletic directors, things like that. And then we got to bring up, and Julie Foudy was actually the moderator for that, which incidentally I got to sit next to the whole night, and she was a blast. I absolutely loved her energy and picking her brain all night long. But and then Dusty Baker was given our Ronald L. Jensen Lifetime Achievement Award, and so he was interviewed up on the stage as well. And again, I think for me, it just nails my feet to the ground as to why we're doing this. And when you hear, a lot of the things that we hear as trainers in our workshops are negative. It's just nature of the beast. As soon as you say you're coming in, they're like, oh, thank God you're coming to my school, because in Cleveland we have the worst sports parents ever. And then I go to Tampa and they say, oh, you have not seen bad coaches until you've seen the Tampa Bay Little League or whatever. So it's so good to hear, just confirming over and over again, the positivity that these coaches had. And I don't know, MB or Darren or Ruben or Taylor, like if you had to just come up with one theme that was so prevalent among all 4 of these double goal coaches that were picked, or Dusty Baker, what would you say is one theme that sticks out as to why are they such incredible coaches?
Well, for me, I agree with you, Kelly, about the energy in the room. It was energizing. I think a lot of that came from the coaches and their positivity that they just exuded just on the stage in the couple minutes that we got to hear them talk. I literally couldn't fall asleep that night, and it was way past my bedtime because I was just so jazzed up about everything I had taken in. Thank you.
Anyone else? Taylor or Darren or Ruben, you guys want to share?
I'll say something, Kelly. I think for me, the biggest thing that I saw so all 4 coaches who were up there to speak, they coached different sports, different age levels in different parts of the country, and the biggest theme that I saw was that they supported their athletes first and foremost, and they really strive for the development of their athletes, and that was, and that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that the coaches are are getting the best from the kids, and it was just amazing to see how they do it in their own sport through their own way, and hearing it from the people that they've impacted, not just them themselves up there talking about it, but in the little tribute videos. It was just really powerful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Did you want to add anything, Ruben? Are you okay? Okay. All right. The one, just one that, as Taylor was saying, the impact on the athletes, there was one, his name was Trooper, and he was actually in a wheelchair, and he coached a wheelchair basketball team. And I totally forget where he was from, but was it Texas? California? Was it California?
Berkeley, California.
Oh, Berkeley. Okay, thank you. But you know what he was saying was that the players about him were saying he gave them independence. And he said when he first started coaching years ago, somebody gave him some tips, and he said, all right, what are some coaching tips? And they said, well, just don't get too attached to your players. So he really coached with that philosophy, don't get too attached, for years. And then he realized that as soon as he started to get attached, that's when the coaching really improved. And that's when his team gelled, and that's when he really became the coach that he wanted to be. And it really hit me, because I think so many of the coaches that we have busy lives, and we just think, okay, we're just going to punch the clock, we're going to be at the field or the court from 2 to 4 every day, and maybe games on the weekends, and we're done. But it's the coaches that decide not to get attached that are the ones that are missing out on a huge opportunity with the athletes. So I think I was laughing that I think the overall theme was these coaches truly love and care about the kids they coach, and the kids truly love and care about them. So I was teasing Jim Thompson later, and I said, I think we have to put a new workshop out called How to Love Your Athletes, because it just seemed like that's where people have their heads on straight. So thank you for that. If anybody has any other questions, and I'm sure on the PCA website coming up in the near future, there's going to be clips from some of those speeches, which will be great to add to our repertoire. All right. Before I get started on honoring the game, any last-minute questions, concerns? All right. So I'm going to jump right in. I have the Double Goal Coach PowerPoint up, which is the previous version, because the new version, for some reason, I couldn't get the videos to play and everything else. So these are the same slides. They just don't look as fancy in the background. But if you're familiar with the workshop, you'll be able to follow along here. Now, honoring the game comes last in the workshop. Now, I want you to think about a typical 90-minute workshop, 90-minute to 2-hour workshop. How is your audience feeling right about now? After you've done Elm Tree of Mastery, after you've done filling the emotional tanks, you're kind of coming off a high of filling the emotional tanks, and you are in the down stretch. If you're sitting through a workshop this long, how are you feeling right about now? When you say, okay, we're on the last principle. What are your thoughts?
I think people are pretty tired at the end of the rope.
Yeah, tired is a good answer. What else?
I think they might be a little antsy, especially if they've been seated most of that time leading up to this section.
Exactly. Yes.
I think overwhelmed a little bit too, just with all the information that they've been given.
Sure. We learned a new term this weekend called cognitive overload. And I think by this point there's a lot of cognitive overload in this workshop, because there's a lot of information, and most of us are trying to get through it quickly. What I'm going to warn you of is this. I've seen lots of trainers introduce this last principle and say this. All right, we are now getting to the last principle of positive coaching. It's not going to take too much longer. I'm only going to keep you here for about another 20 minutes, and I'm going to try to go through it quickly so that I don't waste your time. I think you're going to really like it. All right, this is honoring the game. So what tone did I just set for you? And I've seen many, many trainers do that type of a format. What did I just tell you?
Through it.
Not right. Not that important. We're just going to rush through it. Get done, get it done, get it done. I want you to present the last principle as strongly as you do the first. And I always say, save the best for last. This is the overall umbrella. This is about the culture of their team. And there's so many things that if we did a full workshop, which we might be doing in the future, on just honoring the game, I think it could take care of a lot of issues that happen on teams. And you don't have to deal with behavior problems and issues. So I want you to make sure that we give as much stress and importance to honoring the game as we did in the very beginning intro. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. We talked about Elm Tree of Mastery to get the best performance. Is that weird? I hear a weird sound. Does everybody hear that? Just me. If somebody maybe can mute, I don't know, there's just some strange sound that's coming out. I don't know.
Sounds like a train whistle, doesn't it?
It does. Maybe it is a train whistle, and you guys can't help that. But okay. So we talked about Elm Tree of Mastery. The goal of Elm Tree of Mastery was to get the best performance out of our athletes by using a mastery mentality, a mastery framework, where effort, learning, and mistakes are okay is important. Then we transitioned, which you guys did a great job, transitioning over to filling emotional tanks. The goal of filling emotional tanks is so that your athletes are mentally ready to be coached. They're the most coachable. They're in the great state of mind. They're going to work harder. They're going to stick to things longer, and that's exactly what we want to do. That's our goal in filling emotional tanks. If you were to say in a sentence, what is our goal of the principle of honoring the game? What would you say? Just one sentence. There's no right or wrong answers, but how would you describe the power of this principle of honoring the game? Anyone?
Respecting others.
Okay, it's about, good.
Respecting others, respecting the game, opponents.
Okay, so that's what the principle is about, Kathy. Why is that important? I've coached many teams that do not have respect for each other, and they've won a lot of games. So why is it so important?
I think it's important because it just applies to to life in general.
Mm-hmm.
You want people to be good, not just good teammates, but good coworkers, good family members, friends, and just respecting. Just like it goes just to the fundamental basics of respecting other people, no matter where you come across them in life, and that's how sports really translates into life lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. Somebody want to add on or say a different idea from what Danielle said?
I think sport in general is I don't want to. It sounds like my vocabulary is not very good, but sport in general is too much fun to not honor it in a way that it should to be done in the right way. It can be used in so many different ways and so many different facets to provide a great environment. And I think the word that comes to my mind the best is service. And I think you want to service the players as a coach. I think you want the players to service each other, and I think that you want them to honor what it is that they're allowed to be out there on a great day playing on a field or playing the sport that they love.
Absolutely. Good. Thank you. And I think what I've heard all of you talk about is the big picture. And that's sort of how I frame this last principle. The other principles, we're talking a lot about performance, how to get the best performance out of the athletes, specific skills, effort goals. Filling tanks is about having the kids be coachable so they can hear what I'm going to say as a coach. When we get to this principle, we're talking about having these kids see beyond the game itself, doing something outside of the moment. And as Danielle said, translating that to life and the lessons that you're going to learn on the field right now that are going to translate years down the road. So that's why, as I said, this is kind of a big umbrella principle. This is the one we just finished on before. This is the next picture that comes up. And a lot of times I'll just show this picture, and here's what I get in the audience. Before I even say a word. This is something I would say, depending on where you live, I'll put that picture up and I'll say, okay, our next principle really is illustrated very well by a video that I'm going to show you. How many of you are familiar with this video? And I'll just ask for a show of hands, and usually I get less than half. In Pennsylvania, I get less than half of people that know this story. And at this point, I don't tell the story. I've heard some trainers that kind of explain the whole story first and then show the video. I believe, pictures are worth 1,000 words and videos are sometimes worth about 1,000,000. So I would just put this up and say this is a great story that happened in Central Washington back in 2008. And it really exemplifies this last principle. So I'd like you to just take a minute and watch this if you're familiar with it or not. But coaches, I've seen this video probably 100 times now. And those of you that are familiar with it as well, I want you to look at it from the idea of a coach, from the point of view of their coaches. How would you feel being a coach of these girls? So then I go to the next one. I don't know if you can hear that. I'm going to play this for a reason.
In a game fewer than 100 people saw. A home run memorable not for the distance it traveled, or the game it decided, but for the meaning it carried. As a senior, this was Sarah Tucholsky's last chance to win a championship. She'd never hit a home run before, not in college, not in her life. In the top of the second inning, with 2 runners on the second pitch, that changed.
Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute. The reason I wanted to show this video to you guys is because this is the longest video that we have in our workshops, and it takes a long time to show it. I want you to practice this video because when it gets to this point, there's no music, there's no sound effects. It gets very quiet in the room very quickly, and I would suggest that you read this to the people because it's kind of hard to see. It's just a little bit more powerful than just watching. But you do have to practice how you read it because the first couple times that I did it, of course, I read through it quickly and then was standing there for 5 minutes waiting for the next commentary to pick up. So just practice reading it slowly and quietly and carefully and with passion. So I would stop here. I would start here and I would say, Sarah hit a home run, but as she rounded first base, she tore her ACL and could not go any further. The umpire said that her teammates could not assist her, and if she were replaced by a pinch runner, her homer will become a single. And I usually have a second at the end of that where before this music comes on, and there's a little pause, and I always say, okay, coaches, how would you handle that situation? I just want them to think about it. We use this at our athlete workshop, and I don't know, I think we do it at our parent workshop as well. But I want them to think about it because the next slides are going to talk about the culture on their team. So I like the end to justify the means. They're thinking about this in terms of coaching. When this video is over and we're done honoring the game and we go back to the slide that talks about the Mallory moment, I like to ask the question, is the culture on your team such that you would have definitely believed that any of your athletes would have done the same thing in that situation? So that's how I kind of bring it full circle. So then the next part of the video plays. I'm not going to play the whole thing.
Washington's Mallory Holtman, a player with more home runs than any other, deserved it. Holtman began to carry the injured Tucholsky. Stopping to touch the home run of the season for number 8, Sarah Tucholsky.
So that's how it ends. Whoops. Sorry. That's how it ends. It is long. It is dramatic. A lot of people have never heard that before, and they now have goosebumps running up and down their back, and other people are like, ah, that's great. So the end of a video, sometimes the most powerful part of a video is when you don't say a lot after it's over. You know, I've seen some trainers just take apart that whole video and explain the whole thing, and sometimes just watching that and thinking, wow, you know, that's at the end of the video. I usually summarize it by, you know, how many of you are impacted in some way by that, and does anybody have anything they'd like to share? And just take a minute. Sometimes 2 or 3 people might just say, wow, I've never seen that before. That was incredible. That's awesome. Somebody else might say, oh, I heard that one in SB, or what a great moment in sports, and it's so nice to hear a positive. Sometimes I just get a little bit of feedback, not a huge, you know, question-answer session. But most of the time, somebody has something to say. And then I would say, okay, that video is a great example of our third principle, which we call honoring the game. Now, for years and years and years, we were told to be good sports, and sportsmanship was important. We at PCA have coined the phrase honoring the game, and I'm going to ask you for a second, what do you think is the difference between sportsmanship and honoring the game? If you had to define sportsmanship, what would that mean to you? Anybody can volunteer.
To me, sportsmanship is usually limited to the other team, and honoring the game seems to encompass all aspects of the game, including yourself and the officials and your coaches, including the other team.
Okay, good point. I like that. That's a great differentiation. Someone else?
I'd say honoring the game is more, I guess I look at it as doing what is right, and maybe this is from the book, even when no one is watching. Mm-hmm. And sportsmanship or being a good sport is sort of, you know, don't be disrespectful, or don't talk back to the officials, and maybe things that would be more visible.
Mm-hmm. Great. I love that. One of the things I always try to tell coaches too is these kids are told don't and no all day long. So at Positive Coaching Alliance, if you're a positive coach, tell these kids what they should be doing, not what they should not be doing. So that's great. We like to use trees. You know, we're from Stanford, so one of the analogies that we use is the roots of a tree. And you can have a tree that looks beautiful on the outside, and if there's not strong roots, a wind can blow by and it'll just blow it over. Honoring the game, the idea of having strong roots in the culture of your team is what will be the foundation for many, many things, many, many pluses to come throughout the season. We use the analogy of roots, and we have 5 different areas, as someone said, that I think this is simple. I really do. I explain this as, this is very simple. This will help you. This is black and white. We talk about respect in 5 areas. In terms of honoring the game, it didn't really hit me what this term of honoring the game meant until earlier this year. I was at a U.S. lacrosse training, and there were trainers there from Seattle and Portland area, and they do a lot of lacrosse games against Indian reservations. And they have ceremonies where they literally will honor the game for a half an hour. Lacrosse started back with the Native American Indians, and this one coach was just explaining how neat these ceremonies are when they play lacrosse on these reservations, and they honor the field, and they honor the grass, and they honor the weather and the sky and the sun, and then they honor the other team, and then they honor themselves. And some of it, she said, some of it is more lyrical dancing, and some of it is more of just like, it looks like they're praying. But she said for the first time, you really come out, the first time any of her players have played on these Indian reservations, you really feel like you're part of something fantastic and you're part of something great. And, you know, historically, lacrosse was used in battle for one tribe against another. And after every battle, they would honor the dead, they would honor the living, they would honor the brave. So I just thought that just hit me. I thought that was really neat to share. All right, well, we have 5 areas that we talk about in honoring the game. And the first one, again, trainer to trainer. I'm not a huge fill-in-the-blank fan, believe it or not. I don't love to say, okay, who thinks they know what the R stands for? Just because, again, it turns into, you know, but you can do it, whatever. If you're in the mood, go for it. But I would say the first one we talk about are rules. Now, let me ask you, if I just said a quick question, because I'm dealing with 12-year-olds in my daily life in coaching who don't believe that the rules actually apply to them. And some kids have said to me, well, that's a dumb rule, because especially when I'm coaching lacrosse, there's 50 million rules they don't understand. And they'll say, well, that's a dumb rule. Why are there rules of a game? Let's say you had to explain it to a 5-year-old. Why does the game have rules? Simple answer. What would you say?
So everybody knows how to play.
Okay, good. Everybody knows how to play. Good answer. What's another one?
Provide consistency and fairness.
Good. Consistency, fairness.
Keep the game safe.
Keep the game safe, yeah. And that's it. That's what rules are there for. We believe in respecting the rules of the game, the written rules of the game, but also the spirit of the rules. Do any of you play a sport where it's sort of easy to bend a rule and it's kind of part of the game? It's just part of the game that rules can be broken. I know Taylor's there. Yeah, I play water polo. You can't see half of what we're doing under the water. Give me an example of a rule that gets broken a lot that referees don't see, that's just kind of, sorry, that's just part of the game. Can anyone give me an example?
Grabbing shirts.
Yeah, grabbing shirts, good. In a lot of different sports. I see Kathy, yeah, basketball too. Yep. What else?
I have one that we've seen a lot recently out here, and that's with the girls lacrosse stick check. I mean, the ref that does the stick check at the beginning of the game. And I've actually seen coaches in my own association then tell their players to loosen up their sticks.
Wow.
After the ref has checked it, and that's kind of shocking.
Yeah, that is shocking. It is, absolutely. And what does the coach do in that situation? You know, encourages them. Yeah, loosen up your stick. She's not checking.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Taylor, what's a good water polo one?
Similar to shirt grabbing, but suit grabbing. Because a lot, like you said, a lot of it's underwater, and it can be a turnover if the ref sees it, and so it's kind of at the right time. But yeah, suit grabbing.
Great. All right, thank you. So we're talking about rules and the letter of the rule and the spirit of the rule. And I had a really proud moment. I was playing the weekend before last. We had a big game for my 12 and under team. And this girl, Emily, took the ball and she ran down the field and she scored. And Brittany, who was standing next to her, said to the ref, "I'm sorry, I was offsides. That goal shouldn't have counted." And I was like, whoa. You know, we've been working so much in lacrosse. There's a restraining line and there has to be a certain number of players back. And she told the ref to not count the goal because she was offsides after the goal had already gone in clean. And the ref said, you know what, I didn't see it. We're still going to count it as a goal. But I just thought, what a great moment for a 12-year-old to do that at the risk of losing a goal for her team. So, of course, I was like jumping up and down and high-fiving her left and right. I thought that was just awesome. All right, how about O? O stands for opponents. Now, this is another great thing as coaches. This is something we need to teach. We need to teach respect for opponents. Sometimes if the culture, actually most times, if the culture is not taught about what a gift your opponent is, what do you think the default is? How do people look at their opponents? As what?
The enemy.
The enemy, exactly. And sometimes we do it without even thinking. As coaches, we talk about, well, that team did this and that team did that, and they're very strong, and just the way we talk about teams. Now, if you're coaching youth sports, that team of enemies and demons over there are probably in class with the kids. They're probably their next-door neighbors. They're probably their best friends. And so we like to talk about opponents as a gift. How many of you coaches have gone into a game thinking, we've got this one in the bag. We are stronger, faster, better skilled than this team, and I cannot wait to get out there and play them. And then you go out there, and in the first couple minutes of the game, you're definitely playing a team that's not as skilled as you are, and you're looking out going, what is going on? Your players' skills are just going right down the toilet. Has anyone ever had that happen? Anybody with me? I have a friend that used to say, can I get a name into that?
On Sunday, yes.
Yeah, on Sunday. Specifically, yes. Vice versa, I've gone into games before, nervous, thinking, we're going to get crushed. This team is undefeated. And all of a sudden, your team is on fire. So I like to look at opponents and really frame it to my team as, you know what, we've got a lot to learn and gain from opponents, but we've also got a lot to learn, a lot to lose. So think about it. Tug of war wouldn't be much fun with one team. Okay, we need an opponent in order to have a good game. And sorry, my dog's trying to go out here. The root of the word competition, the Latin root of the word competition, does anybody know what that is? It's the actual definition of the word competition. Anybody know? Don't Google it. You don't have time. Wow, usually somebody in the room will guess. Take a guess. What do you think the true meaning of the word competition is?
Strive with?
Very good. To strive with. Thank you, Ruben. Yes, to strive with. Interestingly, not against, but to strive with. So your competitors are supposed to bring up your level of competition. My daughter, when she was 6 years old and I started coaching, I had all these great drills and all these great things going. We had our first game, and after the game, I said, Emma, what was your favorite part of the game? And she said, oh, Mom, it was the goo game. I said, the what? And she said, the goo game. I said, what's the goo game? And she said, at the end of the game where everybody stands up and goes, goo game, goo game, goo game, goo game, goo game. That was her all-time favorite part. So I said, you know what? If that part's going to fire you up, next game, we're doing that first. So I went over to the coach the next game, the next Saturday, and I said, hey, can we do like the cheer high five line before the game? And the coach was like, yeah, whatever, lady. And my kids were so excited and so fired up because they saw their friends, they were high-fiving, they were talking. And at that 6-year-old season of soccer, we started every game with the goo game, and they loved it. All right, next one, officials. Again, black and white. Coaches, you have a lot of power here. You have a lot of power showing the way you treat officials. And one of the biggest messages, I think, to send to your players is that officials are human. I hate to say. They are human. And as humans, they make mistakes. And we all make mistakes. Now, I have been witness to lacrosse specifically over the last many years, being a high school lacrosse coach all the way down to this level. We are having the most difficult time getting lacrosse officials of any sport across the board. The reason is not the pay. My daughter is in 9th grade. She's a lacrosse official. She gets paid $25 sometimes for a 45-minute game. I mean, that's awesome. The pay is not bad. Why do you think officials are quitting so rapidly? Why are they leaving?
Taking abuse from people. Taking abuse from parents and
disrespect.
Coaches.
Absolutely, disrespect. So as coaches, we have to think about what we can do to make our players aware that officials are there for a reason. We can't have the game without officials. And agree or disagree, we have to respect their call. And as coaches, it's very hard to back up a call that you think is wrong. So we have to make that a teachable moment. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes too. Next one, teammates. We need to, again, teach our kids, you don't have to be best friends with everyone, but you need to respect your teammates on and off the field. And also, you have to look at the bigger team as a reflection on yourself. So any behavior that you do outside of the sport or inside the sport is going to be a reflection on the team. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what are some things you can do to get the teams to bond. And the last one is self. And I think someone brought this up earlier. Maureen, I think you brought this up earlier, that self-respect is something that really gets down to how do you act. Somebody once said character is what you do when nobody's watching. So this type of a self-respect really stems from how does that child feel about themselves and how are they going to act when nobody's watching. Now, let me stop there for 1 second. This is usually pretty quick. I go through these quickly. I don't go into too much detail. At this point, I'm watching the clock to see how much time I have left in my workshop. If things have gone pretty smoothly all the way through, then I take an opportunity right now to have an activity. And usually the activity takes about 5 minutes. I will admit, in all honesty, sometimes I've gone through the workshop and gone, okay, I am really short on time here. I want to get to scenarios, and I might just skip the activity based on the interaction that I get. But one activity that I love to do with this, I have cards that have ROOTS written on them, and I have them around the room. And what I'll do is I'll say, okay, I want you to think, coaches, which one of these areas have you been challenged with the most? And this was one of the questions I think I put in the discussion questions this week. I want you to pick rules, opponents, officials, teammates, or self-respect. Which one have you been challenged with the most? And what I'm going to ask you to do when I tell you to is I'm going to ask you to go to one of the sections of the room that has one of the letters. And in your group, I want you to share with the group briefly your challenge in that area. Like, for example, if you have trouble with officials, I want you to share your challenge and then how you would best handle that. Maybe it's not the way you handled it. Maybe knowing now, you would think about how you would handle that differently. I always say sometimes learning from mistakes as coaches is more powerful than learning from success. So don't be afraid to mention your mistakes. So I would have the group break up. I'd say, okay, you have 5 minutes to do this. I'm going to let my dog out because she's really being annoying. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. So again, I take maximum 5 minutes, and everybody moves quickly to their spots. They start talking, and this really is a great discussion because this is where they can share their ideas. And then what I'll ask the group to do, I'll walk over privately to each group, and I'll listen in, and I'll say, okay, could you share one that was brought up that seemed like a common theme or common thread? At the end of the 5 minutes, I might take a 1-minute recap of each of the groups. And that just saved me 10 minutes of having to come up with my own stories and my own examples for each of these. And a lot of times people bring what's on their mind. So when they leave the workshop, they feel like, wow, I already had a solution done. It's almost like a little small therapy group on how do you deal with your team that's just not gelling together. They're really competitive and they're not being nice to each other. Or how do you deal with the rules of the game? Or how do you deal with officials that are inexperienced? Or how do you deal with kids that are just not treating themselves well and they're not seeing the value in that? So that's a quick activity I do. It does take time. It does take a little organization, but I found it to be really, really valuable. All right, so we bring the group back together again. And then when we're finished, I talk about, okay, all of these things that you talked about are how you create your culture. And culture is defined as the way we do things here. I always picture my dad when I was 16 in the old, like, under my roof, young lady, this is how we do things. I picture that the way we do things here is a fantastic line to keep in your back pocket because it fits in any scenario that you have that comes up on your team. If a player is doing something that you don't like, or a parent is doing something you don't like, or there's some kind of a behavior that's going on that's against the culture that you're trying to create and teach and emphasize to your team, it's very simply answered by, I'm sorry, Maureen, that's not the way we do things here. I'm sorry, Blake, but that's just not the way we do things here on this team. It's a blanket statement, but it's extremely powerful, and it works really, really well. So in my workshops, too, I might say, okay, on 3, we're all going to repeat this. 1, 2, 3. That's not the way we do things here, and we all repeat it just to get it flowing because it works really, really well. Again, to repeat the default, if we don't teach the culture that we're looking for, we teach skills. We teach how to stop balls, how to shoot balls, how to do flip turns. But do we actually take the time to teach the culture that we're trying to emphasize on our team? All right. Now, some of us, even though we know the culture, even though we know what we want to do, at times we lose control. All right, what's a hot button topic for you? Somebody share with me, if you don't mind being brave here, sharing with me a hot button topic, and by that I mean something that has happened or happens in your sport that just fires you up to the point where you would need something like one of our tools called a self-control routine. Does anybody want to share something that has happened to them before that just got them fired up? This is where you get into the fun sharing.
Okay, well, I don't know if this definitely applies, but one time in a game we were down by 1 with 13 seconds left, and the short story is the other team ran down and scored, but the time had expired. Because it was an away game, the table staff didn't blow the horn when time went to 0. So the officials allowed the goal. And we lost.
Yikes. Yes, that would definitely
This was
fire
a
me
couple
up.
years ago. Can you tell I'm not over it yet?
No, your face is red right now. Yeah. Absolutely. Give me another one.
Yeah.
Give me another example.
I have one.
Yep.
That out here in Minnesota for girls lacrosse, we have a 3-pass rule. So you have to, at the youth level, you have to make 3 passes or pass attempts before you're allowed to go to goal and shoot. I personally think it's a great rule because we believe in teaching team lacrosse and everyone should touch the ball. So I tell the girls that. This is how it's not perfect, but it's going to help us be a team. It drives me crazy when I play against another team who just has their 2 best players make their 3 passes all over the field and go in and shoot and score, and typically win games that way. And I've gotten better at telling my girls, what did you notice about our opponent, and how is that different than how we do things here? And that's been my way of correcting my own desire to just kind of have a little breakdown about it.
Good, I like that. I just had something come up this weekend with that. I have a player on my team, Sydney. We're at the 5th and 6th grade level where they don't have the pass rule anymore. And I told my kids before the first game, I said, yeah, last year you were used to the pass rule. This year there is no pass rule. We're playing full field, 11 versus 11, and there's no pass rule, but I do want you to pass. And this girl, Sydney, goes, you mean I can get the ball from the goalie and run all the way down and shoot and score if I want to? And I said, yes, and then I will remove you from the game and you can watch the rest from the bench. And she went, what? What if I make it? And I said, I'm sorry, that's not the way we do things on this team. Lacrosse is a passing game. And she looked at me like, okay. But yeah, it's a culture. It's a culture that we have. And I hear things all the time. Certain referees come out on the game. Certain referees come out on the field, and you just, you know it's going to be a rough one. Or maybe there's a certain player that you've played against or an opponent, or you know one of the girls on your team or the boys on your team has an issue with a certain player or ref. Or maybe you see Mr. Jones show up, who only comes to 5 games a season, but when he does, man, he does not keep his mouth shut in the stands. Knowing ahead of time what you're up against can help you with a self-control routine. What are some things you as coaches do to calm yourself down a little bit when you get fired up? You have any suggestions for us for the good of the cause here?
You know, something that I say to myself all the time recently in the last couple of years is, remember, Maureen, it's about the kids. And when I say that to myself, things always get better.
Good. We should have a banner like that on the field, too. And I know there's some fields that do. What are some other things you do to calm yourself down?
I would help. I was an assistant coach for an extreme perfectionist head coach who wanted the girls to do everything right. He's a great coach. He was my high school coach. But he just things were going terribly wrong if we were up by 10 at halftime. And so in water polo, you're walking over, switching hats, and he would just like be that, and I'm like, Ethan, we're up by 10, and be like, oh, yeah, okay, I guess that wasn't that bad. And so just kind of helping him keep it by either it's a close game or whatever, but we're still doing what we need to do.
Good. Thank you. I have a very simple one, and I still carry it with me today. I always have a water bottle with me. Anytime I feel like I'm flipping out, I just walk away and take a big drink of water and say, wash it off. It's my own mistake ritual. Flush it, Kelly. Flush it and move on. And smile. Because I find sometimes if you just smile, okay, I'm good here. I'm good. So in page 46, we have a lot of different tools that can help you as coaches in honoring the game, in the practice of honoring the game. All right. So at this point, there is in the notes that came along with this workshop, there's a quote from Jim Thompson. And again, this is a good way to kind of break up the monotony of the workshop. You've done group work. You've showed videos. This is a quote that's a great quote. Have it written on an index card. And I would say, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share for you a quote that our founder, Jim Thompson, said dealing with the Mallory moment. And I would read the quote. If you coach long enough, you will find yourself faced with your own big Mallory moment opportunity. Maybe more than once, but for sure, coaching provides a number of small Mallory moments. My challenge to you, coaches, is by your actions time and again in those moments to elevate your game the way Mallory Holtman did. And I'll read that quote, and then I might say something like, on your team, if this happened, how many of your players would have run over and done the same thing? This won an SP because this was so out of the norm. And afterwards, I mean, I got goosebumps. I thought this was the coolest story. But afterwards, I thought to myself, I wish every single kid would do that. And I would love it if every coach was like, of course Mallory Holtman and Liz Wallace would do that, because that's the kind of kids they are, and that's the kind of a team they have. So this is the culture we're trying to shift. So this is normal. The last slide are the principles. Again, lots of different ways you can do this, trainers. I like to not necessarily repeat the 3 principles, but see if anybody can tell me. So here's our 3 principles that run throughout every workshop. Who can tell me what the goal of the Elm Tree of Mastery is? What's the goal of mastery, focus, and coaching? To do what? Danielle, what do you think? I'll call you. I'll call you.
I'm sorry, I was writing.
No problem.
What was the question?
What's the goal of Elm Tree of Mastery? You would be my audience, and I'd be asking you. So what do you think the goal is of the Elm Tree of Mastery?
What's the goal?
You're welcome to pass it off to somebody else if you'd like to.
No, it's yeah. Unless somebody else has an answer, but I think the goal of it is really just to have the kids engaged in the game and not get frustrated with themselves or their teammates or the coaches, and really understand that what they're there for is to just develop and win at the same time, but develop themselves. And it's all like, you know, they're kids, so they're not going to be instantly great at something. While some are more talented than others, you know, there's something to master, and mastery doesn't happen in a day.
Okay. All right. As an audience member in my workshop, I would encourage, that was a great answer. I love the way you encompassed all areas. As a trainer, I'm going to ask you to make it about 10 times shorter and more concise. So what would be a real short and concise answer you would have if I asked one of you, what's the goal of the Elm Tree of Mastery? Real short and quick and sweet.
Effort and learning. More about your effort out there, attitude and learning.
Okay, and what's that going to result in?
Improvement.
Improvement, which is going to result in? Better what?
Performance?
Performance, absolutely. I always say nice and easy. The goal of the Elm Tree of Mastery is what Kathy said, effort, learning, and embracing mistakes. And in doing that, it will improve your performance. Filling the emotional tanks, what's the goal of that?
By filling your player's emotional tank, you will allow them to perform better and longer.
There you go.
And be more receptive.
Exactly. I like that. Being more receptive, perform better, and perform longer. Nice, quick, easy answer. And honoring the game, the goal of teaching the culture of honoring the game is what? Short and sweet.
Respect for the game as a whole.
There you go. Thank you. That's the kind of answer I'm looking for. So when we talk about what are the takeaways that these coaches that are at your workshop take with them, those are the 3. They can get 3 simple ideas because you've left them at this menu. Okay, this is where we are right now. But at the end of this, your workshop is essentially over content-wise. They have cognitive overload. They are filled with ideas. They have so much in their brain that they haven't even processed yet. The goal is to send them out the door. I just had my book in my hand and I lost it. With the book, here it is. You're sending them out the door with a book that we want them to read. We want them to dig into this. We want them to use our development zone resources. We want them to sign up for talking points, some things on our website, so that they can become better coaches every day. And it's something, we're an alliance. So we want them to use these. So if you're giving them, reviewing all the information, but giving them the goal of this, would you like your players to perform better? Would you like them to listen to you better? And would you like them to see the bigger picture beyond the game today? Those are 3 things that would make me want to go out and go, oh, yeah, I want all these things that I don't have right now. So I'm going to want to do more of these things. Somebody, again, is really loud in the background. Is anybody else hearing all that? I'm not sure what's going on, but somebody's really loud. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so we don't have a lot more time on our call today, but here's what I'm going to ask you to do for homework if you haven't already done it. This scenario menu has scenarios from the Elm Tree of Mastery, E-Tank, and Honoring the Game. Okay, this is a lot of information to learn. Some of those scenarios are ones that I love to use all the time just because I like them. The one about magic ratio I think is fantastic because positive charting is something that I personally do and use a lot in my coaching. There's a nice little video with it. It can link into tools. We have a positive chart that's on our website that we use. So that's one that I like to use. And I think if I click on this, yeah. So each one of the scenarios has the actual question, the scenario, and then it has the tools. So the scenario menu is a fantastic place to really dig deep into the resources that are in the book. You will not have time probably to do more than 2 or 3 at the end of your workshop, so pick 2 or 3 that you like. I also say too, if I go back to the menu, and at the bottom there's one that says menu and one that says closing. When you click menu, it brings you back here. When you call the partner 3 days ahead, you'll get an idea. I always ask them, what are some concerns that you have going into this workshop? And they might say, you know what, we have a lot of issues with parents. We can't get them off our back. They're very loud. They're very disrespectful. So I would make a mental note, okay, definitely want to make sure I get to the parent conduct scenario. This is another great one to do too because it's multiple choice. So you can read the scenario, have the group vote on which one of these ideas they would have to handle parents, and then there's some tools. Okay, this is about honoring the game. Again, brings back to honoring the game. Go back to the menu, pick a different one. What I would not do is show the scenario menu and say, okay, who thinks one of those looks good? What do you think I should pick? All right, because it's just not clear enough. And some of them might just take your group in a different direction than you'd like to go. So I encourage, especially new trainers, to know 2 of them from each section, know 2 of them really, really well, inside and out. If you want to know more, please do. But in your first couple workshops, at least have 2 strong ones in your pocket. And then when you're finished, you go to the closing, which brings us to Herm Edwards, who is not showing up right now. But Herm Edwards, again, National Advisory Board member. It's a very well done video. And he talks about when the book of your life is written, what will it look like? Will it say that you made a difference? So that comes full circle. The very beginning of the workshop, if you remember, we talked about our most influential coach in our lives, and everyone wrote it down. And I'll ask everybody, open up your book again to the front where you wrote down, how would you like to be remembered? Because the next slide says, this is your legacy that you're going to pass on. Years from now, when you're done and you hang up your whistle, kids are going to be benefiting from what you're teaching them in this moment. A lot of coaches have said, oh, if I could go back and do it over again, or back in the good old days. And I encourage you coaches, you're in the good old days right now. These are the good old days for the kids that you're coaching. So make it worth it for them, because you can change a life without even realizing it. The last thing says, what are 2 or 3 things from this workshop which would help you make this happen? Sometimes I'll do that. A lot of times it is a good way to kind of review and wrap up. But, again, what I'll usually say, rather than 2 or 3 things that can make it happen, I would say, okay, I want everybody to turn to their partner and tell them 2 aha moments that you had in tonight's workshop. What are 2 things that you said, wow, that's great, I can't wait to go out and use it? Go. So I would ask them to just share with a partner. Instead of having the whole room, they'll all share with a partner 2 things that they're going to go out and use tomorrow. Again, that makes these workshops really valuable because they can walk out of there and say, all right, maybe I didn't understand it all, but I have something I'm going to use tomorrow. So back again. Now, the last part, these are just, I call these the commercial slides. This is probably outdated because this just happened last weekend. So this is a new slide that's updated on there. And then text to sign in, if you can remind people, if they did not do text to sign in, what I like to use this end text to sign in slide for is at this point, I have looked at the app, which we all have on our phone, and I've seen, there are 35 coaches in the room, and it looks like I only have 14 sign-ins. So I'll look at that real quick, and it's a really easy way to look at it, and I'll say, okay, folks, I've asked you all to text to sign in. Apparently there's 30 of you here, and only 14 of you were able to do it. We can't leave the room until I get at least 99% of you to sign in here, because this is a way that we measure our impact that PCA has on everyone. And as soon as I say that, people get out their phones, and I usually get 100% response from the text to sign in. And they're like, whoa, she knows. How does she know? And I'll say, yeah, I know you didn't sign in, so can you please do it? And they're like, okay. So that's powerful there. Then again, more resources to mention, momentum. All of these things, guys, you can do your research on, but momentum is an e-newsletter that comes out that they will be enrolled in just because they did do text to sign in correctly. Comes out 4 times a year. The website that we have is fantastic. We have a new development zone website that has, again, resources for coaches that are categorized by the topics that you are really, really interested in. Access to the best, we use the best of the best as resources, and so you can find a lot of their information. Feel free to tweet us, Facebook, be our friend on Facebook, check out our website. And then at this point, I would say, okay, if all coaches, if you wouldn't mind opening to the back page in your book, we have an evaluation where I'd love you to fill out. So tear out the back page, and I would have, my name and date and organization up on the board so they could see my name. And I would ask that you would fill this out because I'm constantly trying to make these better too, and I really appreciate any feedback that you have. So this is another commercial. We have a great app if you love quotes. I'm a huge quote fan. So this is a Pocket Sports Quote app, free from the Apple Store. You can download it. It gives you a quote a week. It comes right to your phone, and the cool thing is you can change the picture. So it's your team, and you can tweet it out to your team or text it to everybody or put it in the email, and you've got a cool team picture with the best quote from some of the most famous athletes and coaches in the country. I would like to thank you very much for coming. Have a nice night, blah, blah, blah. So that's pretty much it for the workshop. That was a lot of information, and I did it in a long amount of time. But if you guys don't mind, if I could steal about 3 more minutes, because I do want to talk about next week before we go. If you have to go, you can just watch the end of this later. But any quick questions on that part of the workshop before we move on?
Kelly,
Yes.
on the one slide where it says date your card, I know the trainer notes point the trainer at all coaches workshops. Yeah, go ahead, Kelly.
No, that's okay. You guys will be sent coach cards, and at the end of every workshop, we hand one of these out to all the coaches. This is me. I do it at the beginning because I always forget if I don't do it at the beginning. So when I have them hand out the books, I have them hand out a card too. And I tell them, as long as you stay for the whole thing, you can keep the card. If you leave early, I need the card back. And I just joke about that. But date your card, and this says that you are double gold coach certified for up to 1 year. And because you have signed in, text to sign in, we have record that you have signed in. So if your athletic director comes back to us and says, oh, you know what, Ruben never took the course, we have record that you did. Or you can show them your card. So thank you, Ruben, for reminding me of that.
Yeah, this is important, not because we think that in two hours with us that everyone's going to be a double gold coach. Really what we're saying is that they've completed the course. But it's important because when they set up the workshop, they're told that their coaches are going to receive a certification card. And most organizations don't utilize the card, but the 1 out of 5 that do, that require their coach to have the card or to use it in some way, it's very important that we as trainers deliver on the promise that their coaches will receive this card at the workshop.
Yep. Thank you. And again, other trainers will hand out the card when they're collecting the evaluations, however you'd like to do it. But I forgot once and I felt awful, so now I just hand them out in the beginning. All right. Then to wrap up, for next week is practice week. So in order to be considered, finished or passed with this course, you are going to be required to present one of the principles of positive coaching. Now, we give you 20 minutes to present. That being said, what we'd like you to do is a little 5-minute introduction. I want to hear your start with a bang story, just a quick 5-minute intro, and then you are going to choose whichever one of the principles you'd like. Elm Tree Mastery, Filling the Emotional Tank, or Honoring the Game. So I would say 5 minutes intro, 15 minutes on the principle, and then we cut you off. Even if you're in the mid-sentence, we want it to be exactly 20 minutes. I'm hearing myself echo. Somebody's got me up there. Can you guys all mute for 1 second? Just for a second. Okay, so at the end of that, then Ruben and myself, or sometimes Eric Eisendrath will be on, or maybe some of the people in your local chapter, will give you 5 minutes of feedback. And it's constructive feedback, and it's just a way for you to constantly be improving. And we're going to be telling you things that we loved about what you did, and some things that we might, give you some suggestions on how to do it differently. So that is the final week, and I have my calendar here. That will be the week of May 11th. That's when we're going to start those final presentations. Meaning next week, which is starting the 4th, starting May 4th, is when you're going to get an opportunity to make an appointment with us to practice. So practice is so important because so many people just feel like, oh, you know, I don't have time, I don't want to practice. I've had more trainers that have done a practice session and then completely changed the way they do their final presentation. The final presentation is where Ruben, myself, and Eric will say, yes, this trainer is ready to go in front of a live audience. So the more practice you can have doing it, the better. Another idea for practice is to say, you know what, I have this idea, what do you think about this? Do you think this is a good way to do it, or phrasing it this way, or do you think this story would fit? Because you're given one opportunity to do a final mock presentation, so why not practice as many times as you want? And we will give you feedback on that. So are there any questions on that? All right, I am going to say it is optional next week, but I would encourage you to do it. Ruben, do you have any thoughts on that before we dismiss everybody?
I mean, Kelly's given us all an awesome opportunity, and I think we'd be really letting ourselves down if we don't take advantage of the opportunity next week to practice. So, yeah, I strongly encourage you to get signed up to do that.
Kelly, does that mean,
Kelly, go ahead.
Does that mean we sign up via email with you
Yep.
a time outside of today and Monday nights? It's something on our own, or?
Well, Monday night is going to be this, Honor the Game.
Yeah.
I'm going to have the 2 opportunities to practice. I am going to have Thursday at 12 and Monday evening still, because that works into people's schedules. But because the practice sessions are 20 minutes, we can only fit in about 3 every hour. So it's going to be like if 3 of you want to try it on Thursday at noon, that's fine. 3 more want to go Monday night, that's fine too. But I'm going to have other chunks of time during the week where if you're available or something works for you, that's fine too. I have some flexible scheduling. So I'll let you know what time works for me, and we'll come up with a mutual time.
Okay.
The practice sessions might not have Eric and Ruben on it as well. It might just be me. But it also helps for you guys to jump in and watch other people present. The more you can watch, the better, I think. And also, real quick, for the practice session, you don't have to have this set up. I can have it open if you'd like me to, or you can have it at your desk. Or I've had some people that have just used the computer to have the PowerPoint and then put like an iPhone for the Hangout. That's fine. Whatever, if I can work with you with technology-wise. If it's easier for you, I can just have this, and you can just tell me to click, and I'll just click to the next menu. If you can see this, okay? However you'd like to do it. We wanna work with you, but we know the slides, so we don't necessarily need to see them. Just you do. Questions? Comments? Concerns?
Kelly, I have a question about the presentation, the scenario menu part of the presentation.
No.
About
it does not.
Okay, but how in a regular presentation, how long is that? Is that just how much time is left, or how much time do you devote to the scenarios?
I usually leave at least 15 minutes for scenarios at the end. So whatever time my workshop ends, let's say my workshop ends at 8 o'clock, I would make sure that I am finished, and I usually say 5 minutes for the commercial slides, like the sign-in, the evaluation, all of that kind of stuff. So I would leave a good 20 minutes, like Honoring the Game is finished at 7:40. It's finished 20 minutes before the workshop is over. That's just mine. I don't know, Ruben, if you have any advice on that, but that's how I do it in my mind.
If I have close to a full 2 hours for this workshop, I strive for leaving more than 15 or 20 minutes for scenarios.
Okay.
I strive for that. I don't always achieve it, but and yeah, that's what I would say.
The evaluations that we've gotten back have been very strongly about the scenarios. People like that. That's where they really remember things. All the information is fantastic, and we like to do the information, but from an audience participation point of view, they like the scenarios. So try to work that in. That's why we say we only give you 15 minutes or 20 minutes for each principal, because we like to be too long-winded. All right. Everybody good? Okay, I'll be on for a minute if you have questions, and if not, look for my email, and we'll sign up for a time next week, and we'll get you guys rolling. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yep.
Thank you.